Welcome everyone, Shabbat Shalom. It's nice to have all of you with us, and I hope you're enjoying this special service in the warmth and privacy of your own home. So we're going to begin, thanks to Wendy and Alma and Jolene, and our videographer, Lela. We'll begin with Ma Yafeh Hayom. How beautiful is this day? If you have a Siddur, a prayer book, we're in the middle of page 128. Are Yedid Nefesh, my heart's delight, source of mercy, draw your servant close to you. Continue with a meditation before the lighting of the Shabbat candles. We're on 121. And then we'll sing together the blessing. O source of light and truth, creator of the eternal law of goodness, help us to find knowledge by which to live. Lead us to take the words we shall speak into our hearts and our lives. Bless all who enter the sanctuary in need, all who bring the offerings of their hearts. May our worship lead us to acts of kindness, peace, and love. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner, Shabbat. Let's read together in the middle of page 124. May the door of this synagogue be wide enough to receive all who hunger for love, all who are lonely for friendship. May it welcome all who have cares to unburden, thanks to express, and hopes to nurture. May the door of this synagogue be narrow enough to shut out heaviness and pride, envy and enmity. May its threshold be no stumbling block to young or straying feet. May it be too high to admit complacency, selfishness, and harshness. May this synagogue be, for all who enter, the door doorway to a richer, more meaningful life. So we welcome the Sabbath with 6 Psalms, Tehillim, and we always begin Friday evening with Psalm 95. We're on page 130, and we'll sing together. L'chu neranena. Together on the bottom of the page. Come, let us sing joyously to Adonai, raise a shout for our rock and deliverer. Let us come into God's presence with praise. Let us raise a shout for God in song. For Adonai is a great God, the great ruler of all divine beings. In God's hand are the depths of the earth. The peaks of the mountains are God's. God's is the sea, God made it, and the land which God's hands fashioned. Come, let us bow down and kneel.
Bend the knee before
Adonai, our Maker. For Adonai is our God.
and we are the people
God tends the flock in God's care. Oh, if you would but heed God's charge this day. Let's read together from a portion of Psalm 97. The words are on page 133, top of the page. Adonai is sovereign. Let the earth exult and the many islands rejoice. Dense clouds are around God. Righteousness and justice are the base of God's throne. O you who love Adonai, hate evil. God guards the lives of God's loyal ones, saving them from the hand of the wicked. Light is sown for the righteous, radiance for the upright. O you righteous, rejoice in Adonai and acclaim God's holy name. So we turn to the final verses of Psalm 29, which concludes these Kabbalat Shabbat Psalms, these introductory Psalms, each one signifying a day of the week, because now we have reached the moment of creation, or an intimation not only of the Sabbath day, but an intimation of the Messianic time in years to come. So we're reading together, middle of page 137. 137. The voice of Adonai kindles flames of fire. The voice of Adonai convulses the wilderness. Adonai convulses the wilderness of Kadesh. The voice of Adonai causes hinds to calve and strips forests bare. While in God's temple all say, glory. Adonai sat enthroned at the flood. Adonai sits enthroned, sovereign forever. May Adonai grant strength to God's people. May Adonai bestow on God's people well-being. So we'll lift up our voices together for the beautiful words of Lecha Dodi. We're on page 138, and as we usually do, we're singing verses 1, 2, and 9, the last verse. Shalom, Let's be seated and be comfortable, and we'll turn to the beautiful words of Shalom Aleichem, one of our favorite melodies for Erev Shabbat. In your prayer book, we're on page 142. Shalom Aleichem, Malachei HaShavet, Malachei Let's turn the page and we'll lift up our voices together. We're chanting the Chatzi Kaddish, page 144. 144. Yitkada v'yitkada shemei Rabba, Yamadi Brachute Lamlit Malchute, V'chayechon u'yomechon, U'chayet v'chol Beit Yisrael, Agala ba'agala, U'bizman kariv, Imru Rabba Mevora, Olam Yom Maya, Yiparach, Yiparach, Yishtabach, Yiparach, Yitromam, Yitnaseh, Yitadar, Yitaleh, Yitalah, Shemei Gudusha Brichu, Lela Mikol Birchata, Shirata, Tushbechata, Nechemata, Tamiram Yama, Imru, Amen. Together, the Baruch Hu, the call to worship, we're on page 146. Baruch Hu et Adonai, Amorah, Baruch Adonai Barak, Leolam Vaed. Let's read together, middle of 148. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who speaks the evening into being, skillfully opens the gates, promptly alters the time, changes the seasons, and arranges the stars in their heavenly courses according to plan. You are creator of day and night, rolling light away from darkness and darkness from light, transforming day into night and distinguishing one from the other. Adonai Sabaoth is your name. Ever-living God, may you reign continually over us into eternity. Blessed are you, Adonai, who brings on the evening. Baruch atah Adonai, Amariv Arabim. The second blessing together on 150. Everlasting love you offered your people Israel by teaching us Torah and mitzvot, laws and precepts. Therefore, Adonai our God, when we lie down and when we rise up, we will meditate on your laws and your commandments. We will rejoice in your Torah forever. Day and night we will reflect on them, for they are our life, and doing them lengthens our days. Never remove your love from us. Praise to you, Adonai, who loves your people Israel. Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael. Together the Shema. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod, Malchuto Leolam Vaed. Let's be seated, please. We continue with Videographer. In the Hebrew, from Deuteronomy, Videographer et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha v'chol meodecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ela asher anochi mitzavcha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivtecha b'veitecha v'lechtecha v'derech v'shachpecha v'kumecha v'kshartam leot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot bein einecha v'tabtam al mezuzot beitecha v'shavrecha Leman tizkaru v'asitem ben kol mitzvotai v'yitem kedoshim le'Elohechem Ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeiti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem le'Elohim Ani Adonai Elohechem. We'd like to read a special poetic or more metaphorical translation of these words from Deuteronomy about our commandment to love God with all our strength, our power, and our soulfulness. So if you look in the middle of page 67, is a wonderful translation. Page 67. If we can hear the words from Sinai, then love will flow from us, and we shall serve all that is holy with all our intellect and all our passion, all our life. If we can serve all that is holy, we shall be doing all that humans can to help the rains to flow, the grasses to be green, the grains to be golden like the sun, and the rivers to be filled with life once more. All the children of God shall eat, and there will be enough. But if we turn from Sinai's words and serve only what is common and profane, making gods of our own comfort or power, then the holiness of life will contract for us. Our world will grow inhospitable. Let us therefore lace these words into our passion and our intellect, and bind them as a sign upon your hands and eyes. Let us write them in the mezuzot upon our doors, and teach them to our children. Let us honor the generations that came before us, keeping the promise for those yet to be. So we're going to continue with some wonderful music for Mi Chamocha. We're on page 158 for the words of Mi Chamocha from Exodus, singing together with piano and drums and flute, clarinet. continue with a flute duet. Music for Hashki Vena, which you'll find the prayer on page 160. Spread over us your shelter of peace, O God, over everything we love, over our Jerusalem and yours. So let's sing some more traditional tunes together. We're doing Vishamru. We're on page 162, and everybody knows this. These are famous words from Exodus, chapter 31 of the book of Exodus. Top of page 162. So we turn now to the essential prayers, the 7 essential blessings of the Shabbat evening service, called the Tefillah, which literally means prayer. And we're on 164, in the middle of 164, the beautiful words from the psalmist, Adonai, open my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Let's sing together. Adonai, Sefatatita, Ufia Kitilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, and my mouth may declare your praise. Page 166. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'imotenu. On 170, you are holy, your name is holy, and those who are holy praise you every day. Blessed are you, Adonai, the holy God. Baruch atah Adonai, ha'el hakadosh. Let's all be seated, please. So we continue with the blessing for the sanctifying the Sabbath again on 173 in the English, 173. May these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day. And may this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh haShabbat. We read together a translation from the Ritzei blessing on 175, top of the page. Ever-present one, may we, your people Israel, be worthy in our deeds and our prayer, wherever we live, wherever we seek you, in this land, in Zion restored, in all lands. You are our God, whom alone we serve in reverence. Baruch atah Adonai, shotcha levadcha b'yirah na'avot. And the prayer of thanksgiving. Let's read together. We're on 177. God of goodness, we give thanks for the gift of life, wonder beyond words, for the awareness of soul, our light within, for the world around us so filled with beauty, for the richness of the earth which day by day sustains us. For all these and more, we offer thanks. Baruch atah Adonai, atov shimcha, u'lecha na'eh lehodot. And we conclude the tefillah with Shalom Rav. We're on page 178.
Shalom.
take a pause and spend some time with our own meditations and prayers.
May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable to you. Be acceptable to you. Lord, my rock and my redeemer. Lord, my rock and
So this Shabbat, as we are in the middle of the book of Bamidbar, in the wilderness, otherwise known as Numbers, we encounter an incredible story which we've studied many times, but it's a timeless saga. It's a story that has meaning for us every Shabbat, namely the story of the 12 spies. They really should be called scouts. Spies is not the right word in English. In Hebrew, it's meraglim, the ones who go out across the desert and scout out the land of Canaan, the promised land. So Moses instructs these 12 machers, these 12 scouts, one representing each of Israel's 12 tribes, to investigate the characteristics of the land that the Jewish people are about to ultimately enter into. They travel around the land of Israel for about 40 days, and then they return to their camp in the Sinai desert with the rest of the Israelites with an enormous load of fruit from the land. Anavim, rimonim, pomegranates, grapes, dates, all the goodies of the land. When they return to Moses and Aaron, their testimony is contradictory. On the one hand, they say, well, the land is gorgeous, it flows with milk and honey. Everyone knows that phrase, right? A land bounteous and full of incredible fertility. On the other hand, these 10 spies, these 10 scouts say, the people in the land, the people who are occupying Canaan right now are Anakim. They're Nephilim, they're giant people. Probably in those days, if you were over 6'2", you were a giant. So when they saw these Anakim, these giants, their hearts failed them because they realized they were way too powerful for the Israelites. Based on their perception of the strength of the other, the spies tell the Jewish people that to occupy the land would not make sense. They just cannot do it. We shall not go into this land, despite the reassurances from Moses and God. Rashi explains that the reason for this failure of nerve, or the reason for this negative report, is they sent out 12 men to scout the land. And if they'd sent out some women along with these 12 big shots, the women would have had a much bigger perception or a broader perception or more understanding or deeper understanding of what they were perhaps going into, and not, as we say in ordinary English, chickened out. But as you recall, Caleb and Joshua, two of the famous representatives, assert with complete faith that Israel must enter the land. We can do it. We have the koyach. So what's striking, I would say, about this report is the role of subjectivity. How do we perceive others? How do we perceive other groups in our society? How do we perceive our own loved ones? It's all about our subjective understanding of other human beings. The 10 scouts say in the Hebrew, we look like grasshoppers to ourselves, and so we must have looked like that small unto them as well. In other words, the 10 who offered this negative report said, we look so tiny and so weak and so without koyach, how could they not assume, how could the others not assume that we were nothing? You know, we were nishkafelach, as we say in Yiddish. Faced with those fortified cities and with those tall, powerful soldiers, the spies looked at each other and they imagined that what they saw, their own subjectivity, was that they were never going to make it. To me, it means that they had a lack of imagination. Many of the rabbinic commentators say they had a lack of faith. We could argue about that all day long. There are always moments when there's a kind of failure of vision in a group of people. But I would say that inside of themselves, they didn't have enough inner strength to realize who they really were. Because remember that God had promised us the land, right? Way back in Genesis, we're promised the land. And how are we promised it? Sustained by a covenant. God says, your forebears, your future generations shall increase like the sands on the sea. You will conquer the land. Yet these 10 scouts said, we're small, we're diminished. And if we're diminished, they must have thought we were really nothing. So to me, that speaks volumes about the whole idea of subjectivity. When we denigrate ourselves or make ourselves smaller, in the eyes of others, we are often perceived not only as weak, but we're perceived as incapable of reaching our goals and aspirations. Think about this in modern terms. I mean, think about this, Israel. Think about Palestine in the spring of 1948. The nascent Israeli government said, we are about to make a declaration of independence. We are going to declare before all the nations of the world that this land is ours. This shall no longer be known as Palestine. It shall be Eretz Yisrael, this nation of Israel. On the other side of the fence were 7 Arab armies who said, once you make that declaration, we will march into the land and destroy you. We will drive you into the sea. The Arabs were very specific. They didn't just say, we will defeat you, we will kill you. They said, we will drive you into the sea. If the Israeli army, the Palmach and the Irgun and all the other fighters hadn't had the strength and the inner vision to realize that they were strong, they were the Anakim, they were the tall ones, they would never have been able to defeat those 7 Arab armies, which of course they did in a few short weeks. So subjectivity has a lot to do with how we succeed in this world. And you and I know so many other examples of people telling us that the Jewish people are 2 steps away from becoming a fossilized society. In the time of Maimonides in 12th century Egypt, the Jewish community in Cairo was relatively small. Who knows, 8 or 10 or 20,000 people, and many, many surrounding the great city of Cairo, and in Maimonides' community said, we will never survive. The pressure from the Arabs is so great, we will become like the scouts in the desert. And yet the Jewish people flourished in future generations. And we have seen the same idea happen during the time of the Hittites, the Babylonians. The Greeks thought they would assimilate all of the Jews and make us into Greco-Roman gymnasium graduates. Despite all of that, the Roman Empire is long gone, right? And we are still going. The Jewish people have risen from the ashes over and again and have shown that with the power of ideas and the power of convictions, we can survive no matter whatever befalls us. I think really what keeps us alive is the passion for living and the passion for ideas, for inquiry, for using the mind to delve into the mysteries of the universe and figure out what really, not only what is important, what is moral, what is ethical, what is the right way to live. That's what has kept us going for more than 3 millennia. We Jews are not like the 10 spies who came back and said the land is too powerful. Sorry, we'll stay here in the desert and camp out for a while. We, the 21st century Jews of America, are like Joshua and Caleb. We believe in the future. We know there are challenges. We know there are great difficulties, even right now in our own country. But we know that we can surmount those troubles and create a more ethical, more viable society, a society fair for everyone. And some would say, echoing the psalmist, that others trust in chariots, others trust in armies and National Guardsmen and their horses. But we, according to the psalmist, honor the words of the living God and stand for the reality of the living God. Shabbat Shalom. So we're going to say a blessing of healing for our loved ones, friends and congregants and all those around the world and the country who we think about, who need an extra measure of spiritual strength on this Sabbath day. The prayer is on page 371, and if you want to mention any names of our own congregants or friends, Mindy, Alma, anyone you want to think of this Shabbat? Let's see, the folks in our own congregation who are on the mend, Doreen Herdig and Lynn Kelly, Flo Vinnick, Joan Scheinberg, Helene Marin,
Susan Dankoff.
Susan Dankoff, thank you, and Casey Cantor. Lela, anyone you were thinking of?
My husband, Jim Taylor.
Jim Taylor. So let's all sing together. We're in the middle of page 371. Just some quick announcements. This Monday night, we will have our board meeting, board of directors of the temple here in the sanctuary, and everyone, of course, from the congregation is welcome to join us. At 6:30, please, when you come in, wear your mask, etc., and we'll be properly distanced from one another, but smiling at each other. If you have anything you want to place in our newsletter for this summer months, for July, August, please get it into us in the next 2 or 3 days. We're going to press next week. We want all of our information. We've got a lot of good things to announce, programs for the summer, and we'd like to mail out that bulletin to everyone by the beginning of the last week of this month, or if not earlier. Okay, let's turn to our closing prayers. We're on page 586. Page 586 are the words of the Aleinu, which we all sing together, and we all stand if possible. The Hebrew is on the bottom section of the prayer book on page 586. Please turn to page 597 with me, and we'll read this paragraph towards the bottom of the page. Our thoughts turn to those who have departed this earth, our own loved ones, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the martyrs of our people whose graves are unmarked, and those of every race and nation whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. As we remember them, we meditate on the meaning of love and loss, of life and of death. On this Shabbat, we remember with great love our friends and congregants. During Shloshim, we remember our dear friend Reggie Klein, founding member of Beit Tikva. And on this, their yahrzeit memorial with love and devotion, we now recall Eleanor Haas, aunt of Carolyn Handler Miller, Rabbi Leonard A. Hellman, our founder, founding rabbi and dear friend and supporter, philanthropist of this congregation. Sylvia Kessler, mother of Joan Kessler. Robert McNichol, brother of Connie Rosenberg. Ed Oken, longtime member of this congregation. Julie Schmidt, mother of Ruthie Koval. Joseph Siskin, father of Janie Siskin. Ruth Weingarten, the mother of Mark Sanders. And Rabbi Louis J. Siegel, who was my rabbi and mentor. Let's say the Kaddish together. We're on 598. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah b'yamad yivarach chirutei b'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei d'chol Beit Yisrael ba'agala v'zman kariv v'imru Amen. Yehei shemei Rabbah mavorach Lama mei amaya, יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו לילה מכל ברכתה בשירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה תאמירם בעלמא ואמרו אמן. יהי שלום הרבה מן שמיא וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. ועושה שלום במרומיו ויעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. ועושה שלום במרומיו ויעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. And our final blessing, the Kiddush, the sanctification of the Sabbath day. The words are on 123 if you're following in the Siddur, page 123. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu. Shabbat kacho yavao ratzon imchilanu zikaron lemaaseh bereshit kihu yom techila lemikrae kodesh zecher letziat Mitzrayim kivanu b'chatam Tanu tigashta b'gol amim v'shabbat kashercha v'yava uratzon imkotanu baruch atah Adonai mekadesh hashabbat. Amen. L'chaim tovim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. Good Shabbos, everyone. Have a sweet and wonderful Shabbat. Shabbat shalom, y'all.